Here's Brody Brazil.
Okay, let's get right into it. The state of the rivalry here in 2022 between the Oakland A's and the San Francisco Giants. And I think one thing we can all agree on, the relationship between these two franchises, it's ever-changing. The landscape, the scenery, the storylines, what each team is going through, and how their relationship changes because of it, yeah, it's always different. From the 70s to the 80s to the 90s to the 2000s and the 2010s versus here in the summer of 2022. So I want to take a big picture look. I'm going to try and make 5 main points, beginning with this. Number 1, and it's kind of Major League Baseball's fault, I think, to only have 4 head-to-head games between these two teams every regular season. Now, first off, we're lucky to have these two teams guaranteed to play each other every season because back in the day, there was no such thing as interleague baseball. So it took a World Series in 1989 for the A's to finally face the Giants when the games mattered, not just spring training or exhibition baseball. So yes, we are a bit lucky that they do play each other guaranteed every season. But now I think we're at the point where it can't just be 4 head-to-head games. That's not enough, in my opinion. And I'm not just saying this actually about the A's and Giants. I think the exact sentiment applies to the Yankees and Mets and the Cubs and White Sox and the Angels and Dodgers and the Rays and the Marlins and even in Texas with the Astros and Rangers. Any geography that's got 2 teams close by where it makes sense that that region has the rivalry, you got to amplify that. You got to foster that a little bit more. If you're Major League Baseball, you have to help build that conversation, and it comes with more games. So for me, 4 is not enough. Ideally, I think I want to see about 7 to 8 games head-to-head between the A's and Giants every season, at the minimum. I actually think you can burn it out, like you could do too many, 10, 12. That might be too much. But 7 to 8 games across 3 series, I think would be great. You could do a 3, a 2, and a 2. That would get you to 7. Or a 3, a 3, a 2. That would get you to 8. Quick math there. And I think that would be just about right. Just about the right number for every regular season. And then, it would take a World Series for them to meet again. But 4 games head-to-head, it's not enough. We've seen this each of the last couple regular seasons, 2022 aside. But again, this is just, for me, it's not enough. I would like to see more. I hate that this is kind of the new normal, and that's it. All right, point number 2 to make here. The rivalry, make no mistake about it, it is in jeopardy between the A's and Giants, specifically because of the status of the Oakland A's and the Oakland part of the A's. Look, they're desperately trying to get the Howard Terminal Ballpark built, approved, completed, all of the above, but that remains a huge question mark right now. And it's not for me to say in this video a percentage of will it happen or will it not. I've got plenty of other videos about that. I'm just saying with Las Vegas in the picture, with uncertainty surrounding the city of Oakland, it still remains a question mark. How much of a question mark? I don't know precisely, but let me just say this from the Giants side of things. Even if you hate the Oakland A's as a Giants fan, you should not want to see them leave the East Bay. This is a bonus for baseball to have 2 professional teams, 2 major league teams in our market. And the fact that you get to enjoy this rivalry, the fact that if you're even a casual baseball fan, you can attend a baseball game almost every day all summer long because there's 2 teams. And one of them is almost always having home games. So I hope the Giants side realizes the A's side and what they're going through right now. It was not long ago. In fact, it was in my lifetime, the early 90s and even the late 80s, when the Giants' future was in jeopardy for San Francisco. Ownership thought about moving them to San Jose, which would not have been a big deal. They're still in the Bay Area. But there was a real, very real potential that the San Francisco Giants would be moving to Tampa in the early 90s. In fact, the Giants played a last game of the season at Candlestick where everybody was sobbing and crying because they were pretty darn sure that was it, the end of a chapter. Turns out, through a lot of different reasons and even the A's assistance, that the Giants did stay in San Francisco. So let's not forget both teams have been through this in recent times, And if you're on the Giants side, I hope you see the A's side right now that you should want them to stay. You should be pulling for this to happen and that they stay in the city of Oakland. Let's move on to number 3 here. To dismiss the rivalry, I think, is arrogant because it's geographic. And I guess I'm talking to a lot of Giants fans here again with this point because they're the ones that usually dismiss the rivalry. And I'll get to the whole Giants-Dodgers thing in just a second. That is significant. That is real. That is major. But to say you can't have more than one rival or that the A's are not your rival for some certain reason because their ballpark isn't up to your standards or they didn't win 3 World Series in the last decade in 5 years, even though they won 3 World Series in a row a couple decades ago. It's crazy to dismiss this rivalry or for anybody on either side, quite honestly, to say that this is not a rivalry. I did hear a Giants fan recently tell me that the Rockies were more of a rival to the Giants than the A's are. What? Huh? I'm trying to figure out like the history there. I mean, a rivalry is based on 2 things: history or geography or both. So the A's clearly have the geography. And in some sense for the Giants, they've got the history too. There was 89. I realize that. It's not like they've never played in a game or a series that mattered. They absolutely did. It was a long time ago. Some of you may not have even been around for that, but indeed it happened. So between these 2 teams, there's some history. There's a lot of geography. There is definitely a rivalry. It's really hard to argue that. I think for anybody on either side to say that a rivalry doesn't exist anymore or there are, of course, there are other teams that are in your standings, the AL or the NL West, that might matter more to you in terms of ultimately winning a World Series. But to say that there's no head-to-head chit-chat or back and forth, I think that's wrong. Okay, we're more than halfway through. Let's get to point number 4 here. I fully recognize that in 2022, A's fans may not be as motivated about this rivalry because of what they're going through internally. 2017, 2018, 2019, when you've got a Chapman, an Olsen, a Minaya, a Bassett, you bring up Sean Murphy, you just bring up Ramon Laureano, Frankie Montas. I could name a lot of names here of players who are not even on the A's anymore. They are more than halfway through, I feel like, with their flip. That's what we're calling it here. They're flipping players almost like somebody would flip real estate. And so it's not the same for the A's to face the Giants without nearly the heart and soul of their team that was built up, that came up, that had its brief time. Unfortunately, though, their time and that chapter with the A's, it's over. This is not that same team of 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21. And so here in 2022, the A's can't look across the bay and say, yeah, we're going to smoke you in this series. No. I mean, it's not a guarantee. It's hard to be competitive when you don't have half the resources that you used to have and experience and star power. So I definitely understand why A's fans in this rivalry may not get excited about it as they used to or as they once did recently, but this will come back. When it's their time to be built up again, this part will come back. And I would understand the same thing about the Giants if they were going through really rough and hard times. And in a sense, here in 2022, they kind of are based on last year and based on their performance of this season too. I'll get to that in just a second, but to cap it off here and to tie a bow on point number 4, A's fans flat out just may not be as invested in this back and forth with the Giants because they are a shell of themselves as a team. Okay, last point here, number 5. The Giants are still captivated by the Dodgers past and present. And there is, I said before, either history or geography. There is a ton of history between the Giants and Dodgers. There's no arguing that. And that's why I see ultimately that the Giants and Dodgers are each other's number 1 rivals, right? You can't say it's Dodgers and Angels. No, it's Dodgers and Giants, Giants and Dodgers. I get that. And also, as I mentioned before, if you're a 107-win team, a 107-win team like the Giants were last season, and the Dodgers surpassed you in the playoffs, and now they're spending more and surpassing you again in a regular season, I understand why the chase of Los Angeles has captivated you as a Giants fan. I understand why it's put the blinders on and you can't really think or focus on anybody else. That is your number one and who you're chasing. Really, it's the Padres too, to be honest with you. But I totally get it of why Giants fans may dismiss a little bit the A's rivalry. Again, you can have more than one rival. They can mean different things to you. You could even say that, well, of course you could say the Dodgers are your number one, but the A's are still a geographic rival. And the same thing with the A's. For a handful of years there, it was Houston, 1 and 2 in the standings respectively. We know the Astros might have benefited in certain ways in 2016 and 17 and 18. All that stuff understood. You know, there's room for the A's to be rivals with the Astros and the Giants at the same time. But just going back to the Giants, a great last season, 107 wins, and then this season, still kind of fascinated and frustrated by and with the Dodgers. So I understand why that's there. I get it. I'm not blaming you. I'm saying I understand why the Dodgers are still a bit distracting to this A's-Giants geographical rivalry. Okay, so there you have it. Those are my thoughts on the state of this rivalry here in 2022, and that's the beautiful part about it. We're in this, hopefully, knock on wood, for the long haul, that these two teams, they've been around for a handful of decades, and that can continue with the A's in Oakland and the Giants in San Francisco, and that there are a lot more chapters to be written. But as of right now, did I get it right? Are there some things I missed? Let me know what you think in the comments section below.